I'm Brian Carpenter, host of Fresh Air at 5, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 204 of the House of EdTech podcast, I'm going to give you some quick and easy EdTech recommendations, and I'm going to call this Part 1. I'm also feeling a little lazy, but let's strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech. My name is Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech launched in 2014, giving me the opportunity to speak with teachers, leaders, and creators so you can more effectively integrate technology, strengthen your pedagogy, and have more confidence in your classroom and school so you can make an impact. Get involved with the podcast by visiting my website, chrisnessie.com. Using technology isn't difficult, and this is where it begins. This is the House of EdTech. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm recording this on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, and that's going to kind of tie in to my EdTech Thought, but welcome to the show. Now, if you are a returning listener, welcome back. If this is your first time listening, hello! Hope you enjoy the show, and by the end, I hope you feel compelled to follow and subscribe and continue listening to the podcast. I know I've got some new listeners out there because I've been interacting with some new people on Twitter through the House of EdTech Twitter account, which, if you're not following it, it's, surprise, at House of EdTech on Twitter. And if you're not following me on Twitter, you know, like the me account, I mean, it's all me, but make sure you're also following at Mr. Nessie, MrNesi. And I've got a probably shorter episode planned for you today because, like I said, it's the middle of July. I'm in the midst of my summer vacation. I've got one family vacation in the books. I've got another family vacation coming up shortly, which I'm very excited about because, you know, as I talked about on Podcast PD with my buddy AJ Bianco, you know, the last couple of years have certainly been challenging to say the least. You know, COVID, vaccines, the pandemic, all the COVID buzzwords, distance learning, remote learning, quarantining, all of that stuff. And I got to be honest, hopefully that's more in our rearview mirrors than ahead of us. I'm looking forward to going back to school in September. Not right now, because again, it's the middle of July, but I do have, as most educators do, I've got some optimism about the upcoming school year. And this is about the time of year I start to think about, you know, not doing my job every day, but what am I going to do? I'm thinking bigger picture stuff. But don't get me wrong, it's not on an everyday basis because, again, it's the middle of July. But I've got an EdTech thought in this episode, and I've got some great quick hitter EdTech recommendations. Some you can use with your students, some you can use for you, some you can use with your own children, you know, if you're having your own kids and things like that. And we're just going to have a good time here on this episode. If you like what you hear, again, make sure you're subscribed and following where you listen to podcasts. And if you don't like what you hear, well, try at least another 10 episodes. So let's dive into this episode's EdTech Thought. For this episode's EdTech Thought, I'm calling it, I Feel Lazy. That's right. I feel lazy.
Oh, hell no.
No, Will, I do. I feel lazy. Because it's the middle of summer, and I'll be honest, as much as I love doing this podcast, I have loved doing nothing just a little bit more. I have loved taking my two boys to camp each day. I have loved doing projects outside. One of the things that I worked on with my boys recently for a couple of weeks after our vacation was we built a go-kart. Not a motorized go-kart. I think of it more in terms of like the Little Rascals. If you've ever seen any of the vehicles they built, that's kind of what we put together. It's got 4 wheels, it's got string, you can sit on it. And it's things like that. Like, I'm lazy right now for education. Yes, I hang out on Twitter. I'm listening to podcasts. I am, as I said just a few minutes ago, I'm thinking about some things related to next year. But again, I happen to work in a place where, we don't leave for the summer knowing what we're teaching the following year. That's still to be determined. Now, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be teaching world history again. But again, until it's 100% confirmed, I don't know that for a fact. So it's a little tough to plan because, what if in a couple of weeks I have done some planning and then all of a sudden I find out I'm teaching US 1 or US 2, right? So it's a little tough to plan when you're not 100% certain what you're planning for. So what better way to spend your time than to do nothing? And that's okay. I see on Twitter and social media, you've got the Twitter chats happening. You've got, now we're starting to see things like the Hive Summit and, in certain places in the country that are year round, maybe you've had a couple of weeks off of school and now you're getting back into the swing of things. Those schools in the parts of the country that start up in August, August is right around the corner. And, for me here in New Jersey and other places in the country, we're not starting up until maybe just before Labor Day or just after Labor Day. But, there's nothing wrong with nothing. On one of the last episodes of Podcast PD, AJ and I talked about, what we were going to do for the summer and what our professional development goals were for the summer. And honestly, I haven't followed through on any of those things. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I don't need anybody's approval, right? You don't need my approval to do nothing. You don't need my endorsement to do professional development over the summer. And I don't need anybody else's. I mean, have I done some things? Sure. For example, I'm trying to get ahead on the, at least in New Jersey, we have these professional development requirements for like bloodborne pathogens, suicide, cyberbullying, and it's these online learning modules, and I've already completed some. Now, the deadline is not until June of 2023, but I've already completed some, and my secret goal is to get those all done before the school year starts in September, and I'm actually on my way, because it doesn't take a lot of thought to do those types of trainings. There are certainly better professional development out there. I'm in the midst of participating in the Hive Summit, right? If you're not doing that, certainly consider going over to emc2learning.com from Mike Matera and, consider participating in the Hive Summit. I've been doing that for a couple of years, and that's some great professional development from some great speakers and great sessions. Again, none of it's live. It's all pre-recorded, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's PD at my own pace, which is how I like it. So I guess the moral of the story is I'm enjoying myself. It's been a long 2 years. Again, had the first family vacation, got another vacation where we're going away as a family in a couple of weeks for, a few days. And, I'm enjoying moment to moment. I've reflected on the last couple of years and, you can't predict anything. You just can't. Right. And why try? There's really no point. But if you've been lazy and you haven't been doing anything, there's nothing wrong with that. If you haven't been on Twitter, if you haven't been doing anything on Instagram, you haven't been making TikToks, it's okay. I mean, I could disappear tomorrow and I'm damn near sure not too many people would notice, right? I mean, the podcast comes out late. Yeah, maybe a couple people wonder why it's not coming out on a Sunday. Why is this coming out on a Tuesday? But, I'm watching Yankee baseball. I'm playing with my kids. I'm catching up on shows that I didn't watch during the school year with my wife. So, I'm just trying to prioritize the things that I don't prioritize during the school year. So I guess, again, not lazy in life, just currently just lazy in my profession. And if you feel the same way, or you are thinking about this all completely differently, let me know. Send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com. Feedback makes the podcast go round, and certainly I welcome your thoughts. And certainly, as always, I look forward to hearing Brian Carpenter, his take when he listens to these episodes and puts them out on his Twitter, and eventually they make it into his Fresh Air at 5 podcast. So shout out to you, Brian. Thank you for listening and sharing your thoughts. I always look forward to what you think about what I think. And speaking of what I think, this has been my EdTech Thought. All right, it's time for the meat and potatoes of this episode of the podcast. And again, everything I talk about will be out in the show notes, and you can find them at chrisnessy.com/204, or depending on your app that you're listening to this in, you can tap the cover art or swipe up, swipe left, and you will also see the show notes for this episode. And that makes it easy for you to interact with the stuff that I'm sharing. Now, what I'm sharing in this episode, as the title says, quick and easy EdTech recommendations. Part 1, not to be confused with other times where I have kind of collected a mishmash of things that I'd like to recommend. And that's kind of what I do when I'm scrolling TikTok or Instagram, or, I'm kind of browsing on Twitter. I'm bookmarking things. I'm finding interesting things to share. And sometimes they make good one-off EdTech recommendations within an episode. But again, I've been a little lazy, and again, I am giving myself permission to be that way. So what I want to share in this episode here, in the main jam, is a number of basically EdTech recommendations. So this is some quick hitters, quick and easy EdTech recs. So number 1, this is called Make My Drive Fun, which you can find at MakeMyDriveFun.com. It has nothing to do with Google Drive. It has nothing to do with Microsoft OneDrive. This has to do with actual driving. So if you go out to this website, MakeMyDriveFun.com, it asks you for 2 things. Where are you right now, and where do you want to go to via car? And it shows you a route that you can take, and it shows you quirky, interesting, fun things along your route. And I think you might find this to be pretty interesting. So next time you're in your car, you're going to take a drive, you, your significant other, your family, looking for a day trip, looking for interesting things that you might be able to do in your area that are part of a short drive, a long drive, check out MakeMyDriveFun.com. Next up, number 2, we're all familiar, well, maybe you're not, but there's this website called SlidesMania that has a variety of really great presentation templates that you can use in Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay. So we've all heard now of SlidesMania, but there is another website, and I'm pretty sure they have nothing to do with each other, but here's a website called IconsMania. All of IconsMania's icons and illustrations are optimized to be edited and used by non-professionals. This means that you don't need professional design software to customize them. All you need is a Microsoft or a Google email account to get access to thousands of icons that you can use in and on whatever you'd like. So check out IconsMania.com. Easy EdTech rec number 3. This is sketch.metademolab.com. Okay. And this is a cool website. You might want to try this at home, either for yourself or with your own children, where you can bring a drawing to life, a 2-dimensional on-paper drawing. It allows you to scan it in, upload your drawing, and you can then do some basic animations. It's really slick. So It is presented by the Meta AI Research. And again, this is sketch.metademolab.com. And I think you would like this. You could certainly also find uses for this during the school year at any grade level, maybe in English language arts or social studies, or maybe you could bring math to life with some 2D animation. It looks pretty cool, and I've played with it. So check out sketch.metademolab.com. And once again, as we're 3 easy EdTech recs into this episode, links to everything are out in the show notes, out at chrisnessy.com/204. Next up, this is a 2-for-1 special. Both of these links are related to Lego. The first one is, and I'm going to link to this, did you know that on the Lego website, you can find the building instructions for just about every Lego set that's out there, dating back to 1996. Some years have a couple of hundred, 400s, numbers of Lego sets available, but you can search by year back to 1996, and you can get the instructions to any of these Lego sets in PDF form. So that in and of itself is really cool, because let's say you wanted to salvage a set. You don't know what to do with the Legos you've got. What could you potentially build? This is directly through the Lego website. And again, I will link to this. You could search by keyword. You could put the set number. You could search for Star Wars, Batman, and it'll find you Lego sets that you could potentially build. But again, this is a 2-for-1. Another site, this is called bricklink.com. bricklink.com. And Bricklink is basically a marketplace for Lego sets, parts, minifigures. So if you needed a specific type of Lego piece, you could go to Bricklink and you could replace the pieces in those sets that you might be trying to build. And actually, for fun, I picked out a Lego set and looked up the parts and pieces at the end of the directions, and then I went to Bricklink to look up each piece and how many. And depending on the set, you might be able to buy the individual parts and pieces for less money than buying the set brand new. So this is 2 Lego-related websites. If you're into minifigures, you can buy minifigures. Currently, there are 14,000 plus minifigures listed on the site, over 72,000 parts, over 17,000 sets, and some of them are sold brand new, some of them are sold used, and you might be able to get parts and pieces from the US or from somewhere else in the world. So those are 2 Lego-related things, and that's pretty cool. Next up, now, Canva is super fun, right? We love Canva. We love people like Tisha Poncio, hello Tisha, and Scott Noons. Oh, I'm sorry. Tisha doesn't work for Canva. She works for Wakelet. My apologies. On we go. But I know that Scott works for Canva. Now, Canva is free for all educators. So first and foremost, if you have not used your school email account to sign up for Canva Pro for free, do that. All right. But let's say you didn't want to do that. Here is a free Canva alternative, and it is called, well, I don't actually know what it's called as I'm looking at this website, but the website is studio.polotno.com. So that's studio.polotno.com. And this is a free Canva alternative, which has, it really looks like Canva, and it's got images from Unsplash, which I've talked about on the podcast before, and you can upload, you can do background images here on studio.polotno.com, and you can download the stuff you make. So you can resize, you can work in layers. Really, really cool stuff here on studio.polotno.com. And again, everything in this episode, I'm going to link to at chrisnessy.com/204. So make sure you check the show notes. Next up, this one, I'm not really sure what purpose it might serve, but if you're into QR codes, check out QRCodes.com. Toon.com. And you could turn your boring QR codes into what they call catchy artworks, where basically it kind of cartoonifies the QR code, and then the QR code can still be scanned by your device of choice. So that can be found at QRToon.com. Next up, and we got a couple more to go here. This one is called my90stv.com. So the website again is my90stv.com, my90stv.com. And if you go to this website, you will get access to a couple more. You can get access to basically 90s television, the year 2000s television, 80s TV, 70s TV, and 60s TV. And each version of the interface on this website looks like what a TV might look like. And I'm pretty sure it's just pulling from YouTube, but you can kind of click the channels as if you're scrolling through cartoons, comedy, commercials, drama, game shows, soap operas, specials, sports, movie trailers. It's kind of cool. So if you are also feeling a little bit bored and lazy this summer, you might want to check out my90stv.com. And you can also click on and just make it flip through the commercials. So, you know, if you're teaching US 2 and you want your kids to see commercials, you can click on and get access real quick to all commercials from the 1960s. Kind of cool. my90stv.com. I got lost on this website for, I won't tell you exactly how long, but I did get lost on the website. Next up, could be related to history. You might be able to use this in statistics, math, just maybe as part of your beginning of the year icebreakers. And the main website is neal.fun, neal.fun. But the specific area that I'm on is neal.fun/life-stats. And basically you put in your birthday, and then it tells you all interesting information that's happened to you or the world in data form since your birthday. So I put mine in April 27th, and basically it is telling me first and foremost that a lot has happened in the 15,058 days since I was born. Wow. Let's see. A couple of things here. My heart has beaten 1.6 billion times and has pumped 1.3 million liters of blood. My body has produced, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 commas in this number, and it's 3.0 with 5 commas. So if you're a math person, tell me how big that is. I have taken approximately 301 million breaths. I have blinked approximately 325 million times. I've spent 5,000 days of my life sleeping. So there are all sorts of little interesting things here. And then if you go to neal.fun, there's other little quirky things. I don't want to spoil it for you, but check out neal.fun, which I will include a link to out in the show notes. Again, that's going to be at chrisnessy.com/204, or tap in your podcast player and you should be able to get the show notes right then and there. So that's all I have to share in this quote unquote part 1 of quick and easy EdTech recommendations for this episode. As I collect a bulk number of things, you can expect a part 2 somewhere in the future. But going forward, I'm of course going to try to build episodes that have just, one EdTech recommendation to try to make your life in your classroom or your school just a little bit better and a little bit easier. But when I've got a whole bunch, and maybe I'll feel lazy again in the future, and I'm pretty sure that I will certainly put together more episodes like this. And if you'd like to see more episodes like this, let me know. Send me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com. That's the featured content. Now, let's meet this episode's House of EdTech VIP. This episode's House of EdTech VIP is Miss Kelly Andrews. Kelly loves blended learning, the flipped classroom, all things EdTech, science, STEAM, and STEM. She enjoys makerspaces and project-based learning. She currently teaches 5th grade, but her passions are not limited to a grade level. I will include a link to Kelly's website in the show notes, but before you even do that, make sure you connect with Kelly on Twitter. She is at Kelly J. Andrews, and that's Kelley, the letter J, Andrews, Andrews. She is the House of EdTech VIP. Congratulations to Kelly. She is an educator from Texas, and you should connect with her because I am connected with Kelly. Now, let's put a bow on this bad boy. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. If you're not subscribed or following the podcast, I hope that you will continue to make this podcast a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. Keep the conversation going and share your thoughts on this episode, or, again, depending on where you're jumping into the House of EdTech, you can always send me your thoughts. You want to comment on the show notes? Go out to chrisnessy.com/204. You could also send me an email by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback, but I would love voicemails from you. Go to chrisnessy.com/voicemail. If you enjoy the House of EdTech podcast, there's a couple of things that you can do. Number one, and this is the most important, tell somebody else about the podcast. Word of mouth is the best way to share a podcast that you enjoy. And just think what you should do if you love it. You could also become an awesome supporter. I am very, very thankful to the ongoing financial support of the following people. So I want to shout out Dan Gallagher, Peggy George, Jeff Herb, Mike Messner, Matt Miller, JP Prezavento, Patty Reefus, Lori Simpson, and Kyle Wilcox. If you're getting value and you want to become an awesome supporter, go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the House of EdTech is going to be episode number 205. And I'm hoping to bring you a conversation that I'm going to be having with educator and author Amanda Fox. She recently this spring wrote a book on Canva in the classroom, and I'm hoping to bring her in here for a great conversation. So hope you come on back for episode 205. Now, the other thing that I did during this episode was I live streamed it to Twitter Spaces. So right now, as I'm recording this, I can see Felix is listening to this. He is at KWifeLix on Twitter, and he's listening live. I am also seeing Holly Witt. She is at Curious Library. Hold on, I can't read this. Curious Librarian. I'll include a link out in the show notes. But thank you guys for checking out House of EdTech while I am live streaming it. Remember, until next time, thanks for learning with me. And remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.